a match safe, is our spoon and fork combo. And now we come to our tins. Hello, welcome to WayPoint Survival. Today, we're going to talk about the 1930s Hobo Sock Survival Kit. I think you're going to like it. Stay tuned. Back in the day, hobos had a lot of challenges when it came to travel. First of all, many of them were pretty poor. It's why they started off in the beginning. Now, there are various instances of people who just liked the freedom that it afforded, and they weren't necessarily poor or even broke. They often had means, and they came from families of means. But as often was the case, most of them were not well-to-do. Remember that hobos didn't just ride the rails. They often had to walk, hitching and hiking their way from place to place. And that became more common, of course, during the age of automobiles and all of that. But again, when you're climbing in and out of boxcars, they would often practice, and some of them could catch a train up to 25 miles an hour with a single hand, run alongside of it, grab on. Of course, it would get jerked, and then you would use the momentum of the train to swing yourself up on the side of the train, whether it be from the handrails or the little steps that you would climb up the side of the boxcar, wherever it was. It was very, very dangerous and very difficult, and a lot of people slipped and fell under those wheels and didn't make it. So again, not an easy lifestyle. Now, I've showed in the past a significant amount of gear, all the way from backpacks to bedrolls to the horseshoe roll. There's a lot of different ways that a hobo could carry his gear. But one of the things that hobos would have used would have been something like this, a sock kit. Now, Nels Anderson, talking about riding the rails, was a classic book on the hobo, talked about the fact that everything that you owned would fit inside of a coffee can. So you think about that, that's pretty small. We even look at the days of the mountain men, and it was often said that their only real cookware that they carried with them would be a tin cup and a spoon. So we can see that people back in those days, they traveled really light. But I have a decent number of items in here. We're going to take it out and show you. We're going to lay it on one of these flatbeds here and just kind of point out all the things that you could possibly carry. We're also carrying some things in our pockets, which was very common. I suppose the first question that we really need to answer, though, is why a sock? Why would a hobo carry his belongings in such a way? Well, first of all, socks were fairly cheap and easy to replace. It also gave you an extra pair of socks because you see, we not only have this one, but down here in the bottom is the other sock. So we have two full pairs of socks. It also has its own stretchy, self-closing mouth. So anything you put down in there, put a little knot on it, and it's going to stay fairly secure. This would also be really helpful inside of your bindle or your horseshoe roll or your blanket roll. You could stuff a number of small items in here, would help to keep them from being scattered around. And so you might, if you had a larger kit, pack 2 or 3 of these in there. Again, extra socks, but also a great organizer for travel. This also has the added benefit of being safe from the prying eyes of thieves or other ne'er-do-wells, perhaps tramps and bums, some of those yeggs that bothered the hobos so much when they were out and about. And there's one other issue that you could use this for if you really needed it to. It could also double as a blackjack. So if you needed some sort of self-defense item, you could use this as well. Of course, you got your things inside of here. They might not fare so well, but if it's that or get robbed or maybe lose your life, then this would also be handy for that. Another reason why you would want to use something that was this small and compact is because many of the jackets back in those days had much larger pockets than what we do now. So these outdoor duck's back type jackets were very common. They're relatively waterproof and treated so that you could walk around in a light rain and not get very wet. But it has large hunting type pockets that you can access from both sides. And that would be very convenient. You could just open this up and take your pack, what little bit of things you had there, and you could stick it inside. And now you can walk around. As you can see, you carry a whole lot of things. There's even a game pouch back here. And it would keep you from the necessity of having to carry a pack. You would load your pockets full of things, and you get an extra sandwich. Again, not everybody carried a canteen. because again, they didn't always have access to those things. So you would carry what you could inside your pockets and just in general on your body, and that would make it much easier to run and catch a train. And if you wanted to carry a bindle stick with a hook on it, or just tie the sock up around the stick like that, you could. Notice these are knee-length socks. These are not really short, but that would be something that you could easily carry. And again, not everybody had great big packs. Remember, most folks were relatively poor. So this right here, convenient and handy, lightweight, and quick. Now, as I said before, a lot of what you would carry would be on your body. And so I have some items on my person that are very important. First of all, we got to have our handkerchief. Again, you would perhaps have a second one of some sort around the neck. This would be for sweat, also for dust, if you're coal dust, if you're riding on the train, or perhaps that smoke and the cinders. You would need to pull this up over top of your nose and mouth. Would help protect you, much like the cowboys did. So this would be an important part of a hobo's attire. And I've talked about dressing like a hobo in another video, but a handkerchief would be a very important thing to always have with you. It has 101 uses besides grabbing hot things out of a fire, binding up wounds, first aid use, washing up, all of those items. You want to have a good cotton or linen handkerchief. The next item that we have is super important. Safety pinned to the outside with a heavy cord to hold it in place. And no, this is not a watch. It is, pushing the small button here, a match safe. It has the striker right here. This would be a way to carry it with you where you would not lose it. It would always be handy right there inside the pocket where you couldn't lose it, because fire is one of your most important tools. Next, we have a comb. Very important for maintaining your good looks, as it were. But no, for combing out the hair, if there was any dirt or bugs or debris from working on a farm perhaps. It's also a good way to check for if you have ticks or something, you'll feel that attached to your scalp. So this is just one way to keep your hair and beard combed and looking nice. You would also, of course, have some kind of a pocket blade. This one is a 2-blade. It's an old Remington. You would keep this razor sharp, and then it would be a good idea to also carry some kind of cordage. And this is a waxed cord. So we've got this always in the pocket, and these would be repair items and things that we could use to make things better. Of course, we have other pockets, other ways we can carry things. Let's get into the sock. So we've got the sock tied off at the bottom. There's a reason we do this. First of all, often when you wear socks, they'll get very thin in the toes or holes will develop. So you don't want all of this riding against it, even though we've got the other sock, but we want to make sure that this is tied well back. So you've got a little bit down here, again, to keep the toe from wearing out. Anytime you set this down or lay it down, you can do it sideways, but we want to keep the toes of our sock intact. We tie a knot up here, which just helps things not fall out inside. After we untie the sock, we just take like this and roll it down, and then you can see a little bit about what we've got inside, an idea what that looks like. And we'll go ahead and pull this all the way out, and then as I told you, in the very bottom we have the other sock. So that provides us with padding as well as an extra sock. So these are, of course, very handy. The first thing you will notice is that it is stashed in our tin cup. And again, you might not have anything other than that. These were cheap and easy to come by, very plentiful. And so this would be your main container for soups, for coffees, for anything like that. And of course, there was always the ubiquitous tin cans that were used by every hobo. But something like this would be nice and convenient, got a handle on it, and most people could pick these up relatively cheaply. First thing you'll notice sticking out of here is our spoon and fork combo. Every hobo needed a spoon, and a fork would be very, very convenient for any kind of potatoes, or if there were chunks of meat or anything like that, and you can use them alternately. But this would be something that a hobo would be glad to have, and if you couldn't have something like this, you would just carry a regular house type metal spoon. Next, we have about 3 feet of baling wire. This would be very good for effecting repairs on your gear or stringing up a rabbit or squirrel over a fire, something that you had trapped or hunted for that special stew. We also have some soap, just a bit of soap wrapped up in some wax paper, and that would keep it from getting on the rest of your gear. It also provides a little bit of padding inside of here between our metal tins to keep things from rattling around so much. We also have a little bit of a rag stuffed in here, and this is again just for wiping things down, but also as an extra help for us to have some cloth for wiping and cleaning out our cookware, but again, mostly to keep things from rattling. And now we come to our tins. These would be really nice to have. Again, these things were all over the place. Different types of items to be used for. This would perhaps be just a soap dish, this small Band-Aid tin. And in here we have a number of things that would help us not just affect survival, but to stay clean. Open this up, and we'll see right here at the top, we have a razor blade wrapped in wax paper that would help it to not rust so quickly. And there's a brass paper clip there. We also have the razor and handle. Just goes together like that. We have a couple of needles and some black, white, and brown thread. Those would be very common colors. There are also 4 buttons: white, brown, tan, and black, and then an additional safety pin for sewing or holding things together, but it is what the buttons are threaded onto. We have a very small whetstone. You would have to have something that you could resharpen your pocket knife with. So easy to carry. And sometimes they would use broken pieces of other sharpening stones from a farm, from a scythe sharpener, or they could actually even use some creek stones or anything like that. But if you had an actual whetstone, it would be very good for you, a lot easier. And then as far as first aid items, you wouldn't carry a whole lot of stuff, but you might have something like this. And this would be for headaches or anything like this. Of course, this has acetaminophen in it, but it's very small, it's very lightweight. And if you got a headache or you got hurt, you'd be glad to have something like this along. Wouldn't be absolutely necessary, but again, a good idea. Next, we have our Band-Aid tin, and there's quite a few items in here as well. Opening it up, we see that we have a small ball of beeswax. This would be very, very handy for waxing thread, as well as melting and waterproofing your matches with. It's also a very small stub of a candle to help light fires, and this wax could also be used for the same thing. We have a stub of a pencil with a bit of medical tape wrapped around it, so that could be a first aid item as well as a repair item. We have a stub of a toothbrush, black from charcoal. A person could use charcoal to brush their teeth with, so you could grind that from your fire. If you didn't have toothpaste, charcoal will work, although it's pretty abrasive. We also have a small pocket fishing kit. Again, just a hook, a sinker, some cord, and a bobber for a float. This would be something you would line fish out over a bridge or laying out on a log by the water. We have another item here that would be useful for trimming the beard or the mustache, anything like that when you're going into town and you wanted to stay looking nice. Come out just like that. Very sharp, very easy to use scissors, and in a very tiny and convenient package. And if they're sharp enough, they can also be used to trim one's fingernails. Another very important item would be a small vial of salt. Now, you may not be carrying any food, but everybody knows that salt goes a long ways toward making everything taste better, plus it's absolutely necessary. If you sweat a lot, you're going to have to replace those electrolytes, and having salt along with you, just super beneficial. There is a small piece of crayon or white chalk would also be used, and this would be used to mark and make hobo symbols for the next fella that came along. Along with the razor and the comb, trying to keep yourself looking nice, we have a small mirror. And this is something that very handy and useful again, because you just never know. You may not have a mirror where you're going. It's travel size. It's also a good way to find ticks, or if you get something in your eye and you dig it out, you can actually see what's going on there. So a small and flat travel item that's in a little leather pouch here, and it actually says toilet on it. And the last item that we have is a small button compass, just a brass compass that you can use to tell direction. You may not always know where you are, and if you have to head cross country, you would definitely want to be able to have this, because it would keep you headed at least in a straight direction, even if you didn't have a map. Here are the items laid out again so you can see what they look like. Again, a really nice collection of tools that a hobo could carry. And that's it. Everything packed securely away. Not much to worry about. Easy to store. And I think there's some lessons we can learn from it today for our modern bushcrafting, for our modern adventures. Anything that we do, we can look back to what people did years ago or what they might have done based on these items, put some modern equivalent to it, and head out. This is James Bender for WayPoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. While you're down there, you'll find our waypointsurvival.com link. This is where you can sign up to take in-person classes at our beautiful training facility in Southern Ohio. You'll also find our link for our WayPoint Survival digital class. This is where we teach the top 20 skills that we think are the most important from our Phase 1 Survival and Bushcraft class. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.